Frances Willard, an American icon, founder of the Women's Christian Temperance Union and leader of the Prohibition Party. She enforced the prohibition of alcohol by petitioning it, educating others of it, and influencing the school system to teach the side effects of it during the 1870s. Frances Willard was born on September 28, 1830, in Churchville, New York. Her story begins when she enrolled in Milwaukee, a female college located in Illinois, where she stayed for one term, but then decided to transfer to the Northwestern Female College in Evanston, from which she graduated in 1859. She then became a teacher and taught school for a couple of years, before going on a 2-year world tour from 1868 to 1870 with a friend. Once she returned, she went to the Evanston College in order to become the new president of it. Later on that year, the Evanston Female College was absorbed by Northwestern in 1873. After this, she became the dean of the women and professor of English and art. She stayed in Northwestern until conflicts with the school president arose, making her resign in 1874. After this, she was invited to join a temperance organization of women, and Frances accepted the offer. Soon after that, in October 1874, she was elected as secretary of the new organized State Temperance Society, and in November, at Cleveland Organizing Convention, she was picked as a corresponding secretary of the National Women's Christian Temperance Union. 2 years later after that, she became the head of the National Women's Christian Temperance Union Publications Committee. Then another 2 years later, she was elected as the president of the Illinois Women's Christian Temperance Union in 1878. The whole purpose of the Women's Christian Temperance Union was to create a sober and pure world by abstinence, purity, and evangelical Christianity. They wanted the prohibition of alcohol to be passed. The prohibition began because in the 1800s, adults working in factories worked for very long shifts, and when they didn't work, they spent their time drinking, causing pain on their wives and children. The WCT tried to accomplish this goal of a sober and pure world by petitioning. One of their biggest petitions was the Home Protection Petition. This was meant to protect a woman's home from alcohol by prohibiting the sale of any alcoholic drinks. Frances Willard, with help of her secretary, Anna Gordon, was able to get 100,000 signatures on the Home Protection Petition, which made the Illinois legislature grant women the vote in matters pertaining to the liquor trade. But it sadly died in committee. They not only petitioned, they also had many more interesting ways to spread awareness. For example, they would give school courses and guides to students that would help them learn at young age the horrible effects of alcohol. This would prevent children from drinking it. The Women's Christian Temperance Union would really go around to many Christian schools and give this as one of their courses to be taught. Like, for example, in high school you take a sex ed class. Back then, you would have to be taking an alcoholic course to show the traumatic effects it had. Another way which the Women's Christian Temperance Union really gave awareness was by giving speeches. One of Frances Willard's most famous speeches being "The Power of the Saloon is Proven." This is where she says, "A bill, a potential law, has been waiting for approval by Congress, for which the appointment of commission on the investigation of liquor traffic." She then said, "I have never failed to call attention to this, nor have I failed to urge the cooperation of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. The vast importance of this possible law is demonstrated by the continuing efforts of the whiskey makers to stop it from being passed. So far they have been successful and are likely to be for many years to come. The power of the saloon is proven by the defeat of the law each year in Congress. In spite of this, we have gained an intelligent idea of alcoholic business from IRS tax reports and from state and policy records. But what we want is the government to acknowledge the evil of the alcohol sellers and makers. If Congress keeps refusing to investigate, the Women's Christian Temperance Union should make a thorough investigation of the liquor traffic. Undoubtedly, state and national politicians would place all possible obstacles in our way, but we have people in every community who are devoted to our case. Unless Congress creates a commission and allows prohibitionists to oversee it, the investigation would be unreliable. I hope the Women's Christian Temperance Union takes a federal action. This speech that Frances gave was truly astonishing to everybody. It showed that she wasn't going to give up, so no one else should give up. This really sparked a lot of women's interest in the prohibition of alcohol. It made them feel more secure about their idea that even if the government didn't want them to succeed in the prohibition, they weren't going to stop. They weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. This made a lot of women become more devoted to the prohibition, and it helped Frances in the long run. It helped get new recruits in the prohibition, and it also helped keep them, and it pulled more and more women together to fight for the prohibition. Frances was a very dedicated woman all of her life, until her death in February 17, 1898. Her whole purpose in life was to fight for the prohibition. She wanted the world to be pure and sober. She did, however, not live to see it. But she left a huge amount of influence everywhere. She left it with every woman in the Women's Temperance Union. And even though she died, the prohibition was passed 22 years later. The prohibition was passed during the 1920s, which made any trade of alcohol illegal and made it banned all over the country. After the 18th Amendment was passed, Congress passed the Volstead Act, which set date for the prohibition in January 17, 1920. This act also defined the strict limit on beverages containing alcohol, ensuring that the content would only be 0.5%. Right after the prohibition was passed, some short-term effects were seen. People were becoming less abusive, less destructive, and were overall becoming more responsible. Women weren't being as abused or sexually mistreated as much. But it did bring some long-term effects that came with this, were the new black markets that were created, the new gangsters that were being born, and it even made liquor become cheaply made and very dangerous. Not to mention, it caused a new riot to begin. People were really mad that their rights were being violated, so they started petitioning against the prohibition. They wanted to not be sober and get the right to drink alcohol again. This caused for a whole new movement to start. Nothing good for the economy. It made the economy go down because jobs such as brewers, saloons, and distilleries were lost. Restaurants couldn't make enough money to support themselves because they couldn't sell alcohol. The government lost about $11 billion during the prohibition and spent $3 billion enforcing it. Banning alcohol did not lower the crime rate. It increased it because new gangsters such as Al Capone were taking advantage of the alcohol trade being illegal. This all led to the prohibition to be repealed in 1933 when the 21st Amendment was passed, which repealed the 18th Amendment. Thanks to Frances Willard's efforts, we were able to see what the prohibition is like, and it helped us clarify how it could impact the world. This could help in the future because we have many issues like marijuana that still need to be passed in order to see what kind of effects it would have.